What's up, metal and heavy music fans? It's Flight of Icarus again with MetalTrenches.com, and after all the hype, I am so stoked to finally talk about the new album from Pittsburgh eclectic metallic hardcore band Code Orange, Underneath, out today via Roadrunner Records. But before I do that, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to the channel and stick around afterwards because there's plenty more content for you to enjoy, like this one. Now, in addition to absolutely loving their 2017 album Forever, and even naming it one of the best and most important albums of the last decade, I also caught them live on tour with Meshuggah, and I don't exaggerate when I say that it is among the most chaotic and intense sets I've ever seen in person. The songs managed to hit even harder live given their highly confrontational stage presence. That said, they may have just topped themselves with Underneath. It's too early to say whether I like it more than Forever, but it's most certainly another massive progression for a band that is certainly not content to sit still or retread the same ground. First of all, there's definitely an increased integration of the electronic elements overall. In fact, it's a total glitch fest. I think Swallowing the Rabbit Hole is a good place to start as any. This one kicks off the album strong after a great atmospheric intro to really set up the drop. Kind of similar to what they did with Forever on their last album, albeit expanded in scope. The piano tone on this track actually kind of reminds me in a weird way of Botanist's hammered dulcimer, but also mixed with Nine Inch Nails. And then it has a great part where the track skips a few times like it would on a Discman back in the day. And I'm kind of showing my age here, but for the youngins out there, we had these portable CD players we would carry to listen to music, and if they were cheap or were an older model and didn't have great skip protection, as they called it, moving them around would cause the audio to cut out until the rotation of the disc righted itself again. And I thought that this was particularly clever and actually relevant to talk about here because this was especially prominent during the height of the nu metal craze, which Code Orange have very directly cited as an influence on their sound in terms of Slipknot and the like. In fact, they even have had Corey Taylor guest on a track, and the song Last One's Left has riffs on it that would have been right at home on Iowa. But anyways, it really messes with your head, and I saw a number of people wonder if the audio was actually messed up when they were reacting to the song on videos. And it's not just that one track either. It shows up again right after on In Fear, which is another really solid hardcore track. And then also it's scattered throughout the album amongst other electronic weirdness, from shrieking dissonant noise on the more aggressive parts like Erasure Scan and Cold Metal Place, to a more low-key Skinny Puppy approach like on the intro to the relatively chill Who I Am, which has more than a few Dig It vibes. Underneath is also undeniably more stylistically diverse than Forever. It runs the gamut from the kind of filter-esque industrial rock of The Easy Way to the Bjork meets metal approach of Underneath. And I absolutely love that latter track. It's among my favorites and makes for a great closer to the album. I just adore the interplay between Reba's singing and Jamie's demented scream rapping. It's an excellent contrast, made even stronger by the pretty atmospheric arrangements behind it, and the band was wise to choose it as a lead single. And while I have been throwing out a few name drops here and there in terms of comparisons, honestly, more often than not, on this album, I find myself fumbling for clear, clean parallels, which is great. I mean, it's kind of boring when everything just sounds exactly like this or that, or even a combination of those things. They've really managed to kind of find their own sort of unique sound. This is especially true on some of the Reba heavy tracks like Autumn and Carbine, A Sliver, and Sulfur Surrounding. This latter one has a really interesting union of acoustic and distortion that is difficult to place beyond some of the moodier ballads from the aforementioned nu metal bands of the late 90s and early 2000s, maybe even Stained. And as much as I generally come to this band for the roid rage intensity of the more aggressive metallic hardcore tracks, I think that without Reba's alternative and grunge detours, it all becomes 1000% less interesting. Hopefully you feel the same way too, because there is a lot more Reba on this album. These more rock-oriented portions add much-needed dynamics and palette cleansing that are not only interesting in their own right, but also make the heavier moments punch all the harder. And speaking of which, I'm still in for straight ragers like Back Inside the Glass. It's a fucking ripper, plain and simple, and I love the back and forth vocal approach on this one. I've always been a sucker for tracks where it just sounds like band members are just screaming at each other in their faces, and it makes for some great moments on stage too. So this one is sure to be a new mosh pit favorite. But also those sick breakdowns on In Fear and You and You Alone are sure to break some bones as well. So really, all around, there's plenty to love with Underneath. It's got plenty of the stupid heavy intensity that made Forever an instant classic, while also expanding and evolving into further intriguing experimentation. And when stacked up against I Am King just 6 short years ago, it's really night and day. You start to see the portrait of this band with no intention of throwing in the towel or phoning it in anytime soon. I give it a 10 for enjoyability, a 9 for musicianship, and a 9 for innovation, rounding out to 9.3. It's an A for Code Orange's Underneath. Also, if you particularly enjoy Code Orange's style of intense metallic hardcore, then I also recommend you check out Employed to Serve, Chamber, Jesus Peace, Vain, and Loathe, which the last of which I've done quite a decent amount of coverage with, and even had an interview with Kadeem if you kind of want this intense hardcore mixed with Deftones. Definitely don't miss that album. But y'all, as always, thanks so much for watching. If you have not already, please do subscribe to the channel, like the video if you enjoyed it, share it, drop a comment. Also, hop down to the description. You can find links to all of our social media accounts. You can also sign up for our Friday newsletter, which I send out personally to keep you up to date with everything that's going on with metaltrenches.com. And also, if you're a returning viewer, you feel like you're getting added value out of this, please consider donating just $1 a month even to our Patreon or Subscribestar. It really makes a difference in helping me cover overhead costs and also justify the time that I'm putting into this. But that'll do it for now. Flight of Icarus signing off. I will see you in the trenches.